deep dive. Today we're immersing ourselves in one of the most consuming legal and social dramas in modern history, the disappearance of baby Azaria Chamberlain.
It's a case that really, it started with this horrifying, simple tragedy out in the Australian wilderness.
Right, but it just morphed into this national obsession, a legal minefield, and a fight for justice that went on for decades.
It's a truly stunning example of how public scrutiny can just completely hijack the facts.
Yep.
And today we're going to be deep diving into the sources, historical accounts, and also some critical analysis of that 1988 film, A Cry in the Dark.
Which a lot of people in Australia and New Zealand would know as Evil Angels.
Exactly. And that film is really our guide to understanding the sheer volumes of public emotion that got wrapped up in this story.
Okay, so our mission today is pretty focused. We know the basic facts of what happened in 1980, but we really need to understand the shocking reversal that happened right after.
How did a family who lost their child in, a freak event, how did they suddenly become accused of murder?
And what does that overwhelming media frenzy from that era tell us about our own, tendency to jump to conclusions today?
It's a study in psychology, really, and in character assassination. The public seemed to need an explanation that made sense to them, and when the facts didn't fit a neat narrative, well, they just made one up.
Okay, let's start at the very beginning then, just like the film does. We're in August 1980. Lindy and Michael Chamberlain, they've got their 2 sons with them, and they're driving toward Uluru.
That enormous sandstone monolith, right in the center of Australia.
And they weren't just, tourists passing through Mount Isa over in Queensland. That was their home base.
And the contrast between their quiet family camping trip and what came next, it couldn't be sharper.
Yeah.
They were just camping at Uluru, getting dinner ready. And Azaria, their 9-week-old daughter, she was asleep in their tent. It's the kind of idyllic remote setting where you'd expect to feel safe, not terrified.
And that's what makes Lindy's first account of what happened so stark and so central to everything that followed. She goes to check on the baby, and she sees movement. She describes a dingo, a wild dog, moving around inside the tent. And as she got closer, the animal just bolted. It ran off into the night.
So Lindy opens a tent, and Azaria is gone.
Gone. A huge search started almost immediately. Other campers, police. But the baby was never found.
They did find some of her clothing, though. Some torn items later on.
That initial finding, the torn jumpsuit and singlet, was so critical. The parents, they maintained the dingo theory, which, while an attack on a baby is incredibly unusual, it seemed plausible in such a remote area.
Plausible, but also just shocking. And you're right, if the story ended there, it would just be filed away as this incredibly tragic freak accident.
But it wasn't the end. It was, as you said, just the start of the story.
And that's the pivot we have to unpack, because the nation's mourning period was, it was microscopic. Almost immediately, the Chamberlains weren't seen as victims. They were treated with suspicion.
So, wait, it wasn't a gradual thing. It was almost instant. They went from having the nation's sympathy to being treated like pariahs just because of how they acted.
It sounds impossible, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But that's the power of narrative. It wasn't one single event, but it was this slow poisoning of public opinion, and it was fueled by Lindy's demeanor.
What do you mean by your demeanor?
Lindy Chamberlain just didn't fit the public's idea of what a grieving mother should look like. She wasn't outwardly hysterical on camera. She was composed, maybe even came across as cold.
And in the absence of a body or a confession, the public wanted, emotional evidence of her innocence?
That's it. Her calm demeanor became proof of her guilt in the court of public opinion.
And I'm guessing once that seed of doubt was planted, everything else just became more evidence of wrongdoing. I know the sources point to their religious background as something that really amplified the suspicion.
Absolutely. The Chamberlains were devout Seventh-day Adventists. The media, and by extension the public, they just seized on this. They twisted their faith into something sinister.
Weren't there rumors about the baby's name?
There were. Awful rumors circulated that the name Azaria meant sacrifice in the wilderness. Completely false, of course, but it provided this convenient dark motive for a crime the public was already starting to believe had happened.
So the public narrative is building on these perceived character flaws and this religious bias. But to actually get a conviction, you need more than that. You need evidence.
You do.
And that's where the forensic science, or maybe the faulty forensic science, comes in.
Precisely. The legal case was eventually driven by this theory of fetal blood spray. Investigators claim they found evidence of blood in the family's car, their Holden Tirana.
And they interpreted that as the spray pattern left when the baby's throat was cut.
Yes. And this evidence was highly contested at the time, and, well, ultimately it was proven to be completely incorrect. It was just sound-deadening material from the factory. But in that moment, it was explosive.
That fetal blood theory was the intellectual fuel for the public fire then. The people who were already convinced she was guilty now had a scientific reason to back it up. It cemented the shift, the radical shift, from sympathy to judgment. And this whole devastating process, the loss, the character assassination, the legal spectacle built on shaky ground, is exactly what that 1988 film, A Cry in the Dark, captured so well.
The casting was brilliant. Meryl Streep as Lindy Chamberlain. She even got an Oscar nomination for it. And Sam Neill as Michael.
And their performances, as the sources note, they didn't sugarcoat the situation. When you watch the film, the tension between them is agonizing. You can see them fighting the world and eventually kind of fighting each other under all that pressure.
The film's real power is in its depiction of that psychological strain. The sources specifically mention how uncomfortable it is to watch the scenes of the constant court appearances and the intense, invasive media scrutiny.
Just imagine it, going on trial for murder while you're also being tried by every newspaper, every talk show, every dinner table conversation across 2 countries. Which takes us right into our next section, the national obsession. This wasn't just front-page news. It permeated the entire fabric of society. It was the conversation topic.
The film does a masterful job of showing that. It cuts away from the courtroom drama to show just how ubiquitous the case was.
Right. They show vignettes of people arguing about it everywhere.
Everywhere. People arguing about Lindy's guilt at poolsides, over barbecues in busy offices, down at the local pub.
Even at, fancy dinner parties and tennis clubs.
It became a national amateur detective game. Except the stakes were a real family's freedom and their reputation.
And in all these scenarios, without the real facts, rumor just becomes confirmation. People were jumping to these really firm conclusions, repeating sensational, incorrect information, and just offering their rock-solid opinions to anyone who'd listen.
And this fascination wasn't just in Australia. The sources show this incredible trans-Tasman focus.
Oh, because both Lindy and Michael were born in New Zealand.
Exactly. So that gave the case this unique resonance across the Tasman Sea. It dominated news channels and tabloids on both sides. It really became this shared cultural moment for both nations.
A kind of shared media event.
A huge one.
The sensationalism was just at its peak. I remember the source anecdote about the impact of the visual media, specifically seeing the images of the bloody clothes on the news. That one single piece of raw, visceral imagery, it was enough to create this gut reaction, and the public just got more and more wound up each time new information came to light, whether that information was fact or just rumor.
That's the mechanism of mass media controversy, isn't it? A shocking visual or a compelling character assassination, like Lindy's cold demeanor, that provides an anchor, and then every bit of information after that is just interpreted through that same lens of suspicion. It just confirms what you already believe.
If the intensity was that high back in 1980, just using print and television news, it really makes you stop and think about today.
It really does. It raises that chilling question the sources want us to consider. What would this look like now? In our age of the internet and social media.
Oh, wow.
In 1980, the press cycle at least gave people, 24 hours to digest things before the next scoop hit the newsstand. Today, that verdict would be delivered on Twitter in minutes.
The velocity of misinformation would be devastating. Every single theory, every leaked, unverified piece of evidence, every personal attack on Lindy's character, it would all be instantly viral.
The whole idea of due process would be completely swallowed by information overload and just countless unverified opinions spreading like wildfire.
So the historical case, when you see it framed through the film, it really acts as a profound warning.
It does. It shows how the power of unchecked, amplified public opinion can just supersede factual evidence and completely overwhelm the justice system. The public belief in Lindy's guilt was so loud, so dominant, it became impossible for the family to escape, regardless of the eventual findings.
So we've gone on a real deep dive here. We started with the heartbreaking simplicity of a dingo taking a baby at Uluru in 1980, and we've tracked its terrible evolution into this multi-decade legal nightmare, a national spectacle built on prejudice, faulty science, and media sensationalism.
And the enduring quality of this story, the reason the film and the case still resonate so much, is that even if you know the outcome, the depiction of that media circus and the psychological burden is just mesmerizing.
And as the source material reminds us, the death happened in 1980, the movie came out in 1988, but the story, I mean, it carried on for decades after that as the Chamberlains fought tirelessly to fully clear their names.
It's a powerful lesson in how fragile truth can be when it's confronted with a hungry public that's demanding a simple, satisfying villain.
Indeed. We started with a dingo running off into the darkness, but the nation ended up pursuing a far more complex and, frankly, a more dangerous target.
Absolutely. So for you, the listener, here's something to explore. If the media successfully turned a wild animal attack into a murder accusation using only newspapers and television, what's the dingo today? What's that simple, quick target that allows our social media ecosystem to ignore complexity and deliver these instant bias verdicts? This story is absolutely worth revisiting,